This is episode 362 of Jumblethink.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers all about their journey of turning their dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's show is our friend Mark Delaney. More about Mark in a moment. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, if you've never subscribed to Jumblethink, hey, it's a great time to do it. Head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, search for Jumblethink, and click subscribe. It's even easier if you head on over to jumblethink.com. You'll find links to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. So head on over and subscribe to the show. Now let's join today's conversation. Hey there, friends. Welcome to Jumblethink. Happy Friday if you're listening on the day the episode comes out. If you're not, well, I hope it's a happy day, whatever day it happens to be for you. I am super excited about today's conversation, but before we dive into that, we want to thank our friends over at Floxy for sponsoring today's show. Now, Floxy can help you with a monthly subscription to top-notch design, web development, and even video editing. Best of all, they want to give our listeners 10% off your first month. All you have to do is head on over to Floxy, FLOCKSY.com/Jumblethink. On the show today, our guest is Mark Delaney. Mark is a new friend. We've gotten to know each other over the last several months, but he was introduced to another friend, Rocky Lalvoni, who's been on the show. If you've missed that conversation, go check out the conversation with Rocky after you listen to this one. Really fun conversation there. But Mark is doing some amazing things that really align with our passion here on the show, here at Jumblethink, and that's finding purpose, figuring out what you're created to do, and stepping into that destiny. He has something called the Purpose Mastermind. We're going to talk about that. He has a podcast called the My Life Platform Podcast with Mark Delaney. He's doing a lot of other great stuff. He also has a course, a brand new course called How to Change Course, which is a process to overcome addiction and find true freedom, whether it's food addiction or drugs or some other kind of addiction. It's an amazing program to help you through that process. You can find all of this at markdelaney.me. That link is in the episode notes. I could go on and on about who Mark is, but let's go ahead and join the conversation we had with today's guest, Mark Delaney. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
It is a pleasure. I'm excited about this conversation.
Well, it's kind of fun for me to chat with you, one, because I love what you're about, which always makes the conversation more fun when I'm excited about the topic. But beyond that, I find your journey into what you're doing quite interesting. You worked as a pastor, if I remember correctly, and then you've worked
in my 20s.
Yeah, and then you worked as a teacher.
Yeah.
And then you've been a speaker and a coach, and you have this really cool program. And the other reason I'm super excited about the conversation today is that often when I'm talking to a guest, it might be the first time I ever talk to them. So I do the research, all that kind of stuff. But we've been having a dialogue, whether it was jumping on some meetings before or going through your workbook that you have or emails. I feel like I know you, which it doesn't typically happen with our guests.
Well, I love it. And I love I tell you, as a man in the last year and a half of my life, I've tapped into probably my sweet spot. And what's enabled me to do that, quite frankly, is vulnerability. It's so interesting as men. It feels like for us to get our sweet spot in life, I have to accomplish something great. Nothing has caused me as a man to become anything I really ever wanted to be, and to accomplish anything I wanted to accomplish, but tapping into vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so I'm a wide open book, like in talking about any part of my journey. I don't care what it is. I'm wide open.
Yeah.
I like to talk more about the failures in my journey than the successes of the journey, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Because it's in leveraging the failures that's really caused any success to happen.
Yeah. Well, so I want to circle back to something you said there. And, you said in the last year and a half, you've really come to this place about vulnerability being I wouldn't say like a superpower, but it kind of is. It opens up a lot of things that I think most of us run from in our lives. And so we live in a society, we talk about keeping up with the Joneses, and we talk about doing all of these things. And I asked this big thought leader industry guy, he's a podcaster. I was at an event in New York City, and I said to him, they were doing a question and answer, and I said, we live in a culture that says we value authenticity, and yet we live in a culture that actually is perpetuating persona. So, and it drives me nuts. And he gave really a crummy answer. I'll just be straight up. It was horrible. And I talked to some people afterwards who they're like, I don't think he answered your question. It's something we struggle with. Why do you think we struggle so much with vulnerability and transparency?
Yeah, no, this is an amazing topic. I've got goosebumps thinking about this one. I think it's just our human nature that, listen, I think all of our lives, I think, are all the same. Our core story is all the same. We're born, we're excited for a while. And I think ultimately what we're excited about is that our life has meaning, that we have purpose, that we can make an impact in the world. I think that's what we're really excited about. That's what we really want. I think every man, for instance, wants to be Superman in the world. And but then number 3 happens. Number 3 is something happens to me or something happens because of me.
Okay, so I want to stop you there. I think of what you're talking about, born, excited. I think of, okay, for the average person. Now, I know some people have trauma much earlier on. Maybe it's an abusive parent. Maybe it's a situation. Maybe it's extreme loss that could push up the timeline of this. But I think of like, you are born. I think we covered that one. That's pretty easy. I mean, that just happens. Either you're born or not born. And if you're not born, you're not listening right now. So that's a good delineator there. You get into your teens and you're kind of awkward and you're wrestling through life. And what do you want to do? And maybe that's something that we need to work on as a culture of like not telling people to figure out who they are and what they need to do at 15. That's probably not the best time to be doing it. But then I think of my 20s. And for me, I went into Bible college and I jumped into it and it was like, I'm going to go change the world. I'm going to go take this message of, in my case, the message of Jesus, and I'm, going to set the world on fire with change and all that kind of thing. And then for me, at least, that moment of like, I wouldn't say you kind of lose this, like, do I really make an impact? Do I really have it? But it seems like that seems to be in the mid to late 20s. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair assessment. I think I was just talking to my son recently, who's 26 years old. He's a professor at a university, and he feels he's had a lot of anxiety in this last season of his life with COVID going on, and he's gotten stripped from everything he does to impact. And he's really struggled with anxiety. I told him, I said, Matthew, of course you have. I was like, if you think of the movie Braveheart, if you went to William Wallace and you said, listen, you don't get to have a horse anymore, and we're taking your sword, and you don't get to have a kilt. And by the way, you don't get to fight any fights anymore. I mean, William Wallace is going to struggle with anxiety because he doesn't get to do what he is designed and called and equipped to do as a man. Okay. So, of course, you're going to struggle with anxiety. So in our culture, without a doubt, we're all set up to see how much we can achieve with our life. And the very mission to see how much I can achieve is much more likely to stifle us than it is to empower us.
So we've gone through born, excited, something stifles us or changes us. What happens after that for the average person?
Yeah, when something happens to us or because of us, and it really doesn't matter what it is, our instinct is to go hide. Okay. It's like we're on this path in life, and our instinct is something happened. Oh my goodness, I have to go hide, because our human nature is that there isn't an answer to what I did, or there isn't an answer to what happened to me. And so we go in the bushes and hide, and then we become what I heard a man recently in my conversation with him. He said, all I've done with my life is lived to protect an image or project an image. I've just been an image protector.
So that's going back to that original thing of persona there.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And to think about living one's life with the goal of projecting and protecting an image of what people think of us. So clearly, that's not living.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So what you're saying here that the biggest motivator of keeping up with the Joneses, or I couldn't say that right, but let's keep up with the Joneses, or that persona mentality. Is it all rooted in the fear of perception of what people think of you, or do you think there's other things that impact that?
I think it's just rooted in pride.
Okay.
I think pride gives us a false answer to every human problem.
Okay.
And in trying to do something in life, the impulse is, I must show people I've got it all together. I must project that I am the man to be the man.
Okay.
And what's so unique is that vulnerability gives us the ability to not just be someone that projects something to the world, but actually have something to give to the world.
Okay.
But as long as I walk into the room just trying to prove myself to you, I have nothing to give you that matters. Okay. But when I no longer need to prove myself to you, now my heart is postured to actually give something to you.
I've struggled with this personally, where I feel like, you come in and you are, I wouldn't say competing, but that might be the right word for it. But you're trying to leverage, hey, I actually know legitimately what I'm doing here, or I am an expert in this. And, I think that I think of other people that are in similar spaces, whether it's a podcaster or a business owner, and it's that syndrome where you start dropping names, you start trying to prove your worth and value. If that's not the way to do it, how do we do that? How do we prove what we know and our experience? And how do we really come in? And I don't want to say, hey, I'm coming in and saying, hey, I'm the expert in this. But how do we bring that place where people see the value of what you have to offer? I know that it's not something I struggle with as much today as it was in my early 30s or my 20s, but there's that desire to come in and people, at least for me, it comes off to, I came off as, oh, he's a know-it-all, he's doing, whatever. How do we go in and actually, how do we process how to present in those situations where we do have value, we do have knowledge, we do have experience, and yet people may not realize, know, or do that. And you may come in and be so much more of an expert in a space than anyone else in the room, and people are throwing their opinions around. And you're just like, but I know how to solve this. How do you wrestle that without going the other extreme? It seems like a really hard walk to walk.
That's a $1 million question. It's a $1 million question. I was a teacher for years, so I never had to do anything to get a customer. For 16 years, a bell caused them to come to me. And I tell you, I've been looking for a bell for 3 years to ring to get people to come to me.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it's an ongoing battle. I feel the pain in what you are saying. I'll say this. I know this as a man. I would rather not have customers than do things to cause me to lose my soul to get customers.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. But there is that tension. Conventional wisdom, people will tell you that you have to project this and you've got to show this.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I don't think that really attracts as much as we think it does. I think when we look at a lot of things, let's be honest, that a lot of the things we see in the entrepreneurial world is just a bunch of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's games. It can attract and draw people, and it can even cause people to give you money. But it's because they're chasing your smoke and mirror, not chasing the substance of who you are.
Yeah.
A man recently, because I struggle with this, what you're saying, talking about, it is like, because what I try to help people with is their life. And, recently I was on a mentoring call and a networking call. And I told people what I do. I said, what I do is, listen, I believe everyone's life has great purpose. They can know it boldly and they can be set free to pursue it. And here was his question. So what industry are you going for? I was like, humans? Like humans? It's like, so, people want success. They want to get rich. And so if you tell them I can make you rich, you might get some business, but is that really what we want? So here's what a good mentor said to me recently. He looked across the table and he said, Mark, with what you're doing, you cannot trust conventional wisdom. And I was like, I had two thoughts. One was immediately, I don't trust conventional wisdom. When I usually hear people say, hey, I can help you do this, my first thought is, no, you can't. It just is. Because I feel like there's so many false messages out there, so many sales pitches that really are not the real deal. That's why when I find people that are the real deal, I link up to them. You're an example of that. I listen to your podcast and the kind of people on it. I'm like, Michael Woodward, I can buy into that guy. I can trust that guy.
Yeah.
But here's my second thought when my mentor said that to me. I asked myself, but I don't know what I trust yet. It's not enough just to say I don't trust conventional wisdom. It's like, what am I going to trust? And so the question you're asking, I'm answering right now in my life. And I'll tell you, my first impulse that I am going with right now is I'm going to trust my heart for people. I'm going to trust how I feel God has always used me in my life. I think back to when I was 12 and I had a paper route, and every Christmas I made cookies for my customers.
Yeah. That's
the kind of human I am.
Yeah.
And that's the person I'm going to be. I can't afford to go try to be one of these people that gets on social media and projects an image. I'm going to be who I am. And vulnerability is a big part of it. I'm not going to project I've got it all together. Matter of fact, a little secret, I just ordered a kilt.
Why?
I ordered a kilt because I'm about to do a series of videos on the power of vulnerability.
Okay.
And I'm going to wear a kilt when I'm doing it. I'm like, I'm sorry. You know what? That's not conventional wisdom, but that's me. I'm the guy that just shows up in life and I'm just like, I'm going to find a creative way to help somebody. And that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. I'm going to trust my gifts and my talents in the heart with which I want to give it. And I'm going to give it 100%.
Super cool. I want to pivot here a little bit. I mean, it's not a huge departure from the conversation at all, but it is moving away from this vulnerability question, a topic I'm sure we could talk hours about all by itself. But I want to move towards kind of your sweet spot, what you're all about, and it's this concept of purpose. Now, throughout the conversation so far, you've used these two words together quite a bit, impact and purpose. First off, I want to know, when you say purpose, what in the world are you talking about? Because, some people look at, my purpose in life is my job. It's my vocation. My purpose is to go in, make money, come home. And as you know, I'm of the opinion that there are a lot of people that are truly not living, especially with COVID now. They're choosing to check out and say, one day I'll go do the things that are burning inside of me one day. And they play it safe. So first off, I want to know, what do you mean by purpose? And then second, going a little bit deeper, you're using these words impact and purpose together. What in the world do they have to do with each other?
Yeah, well, for me, purpose simply, I think every single human needs to be able to finish this sentence. My purpose is. And the purpose needs to be something that matters. And to me, the word impact, if my purpose is not about making a difference outside of me, my purpose doesn't matter. There's just, if my purpose in life is about me, I have set my life up for futility. Yeah. It doesn't even matter how much success you have at taking care of yourself. At the end of that road is great futility.
Yeah. So, okay, you say that everyone should be able to say, my purpose is blank. Give us some examples. You've worked with a lot of people on this. You've worked through it yourself. Give us some examples of like what this could actually sound like.
I hesitate to do that because one of my rules in business is on this mission I'm on. I don't even say I'm in business. I'm on a mission.
Yeah.
One of my rules is I never say someone's purpose.
Okay.
And I don't say mine until the end of our group and everyone shares theirs. And I wait for someone to say, what's yours? Then I'll say mine.
Yeah.
And the reason I never share it is because when people go through this course, I want them at the end to come up with this powerful statement. And I feel like if I leave a trail of breadcrumbs, they'll lose the powerful nature of what their statement is. Besides the fact, I want them to fully wrestle. Mm. And I feel like if I say, okay, here's my purpose or here's what someone else's purpose was, I feel like it gives us too big of a head start and it steals us away from the wrestling that we need to do. If you make me, I'll tell you my purpose. I truly just try to never share my purpose with anyone else's until we're in that space where we've gone through these 4 sessions and in the third week, everyone says their purpose and we all share ours. And I'll say this, it's just powerful. It's so precious.
Well,
but everyone needs to answer the question.
I think that the question I'm trying to answer, and maybe there is a better way for you to answer it than saying, this is an example, is what I think there are some people who go, I feel like I'm created. I feel like I'm here for something. Yeah. But they don't know how to really process that.
That's the whole purpose of the mastermind.
Absolutely. So when we kind of circle back at this, it's I think easy to make it simple to say, oh, this is an example of my purpose is that I'm going to, or whatever that is. So maybe a better way to ask this, since you don't want to give that away, which I get. You don't want, it's coming back to that keeping up with the Joneses kind of philosophy. If you hear someone else's, if you know somebody else's, you can carbon copy. It's like the Italian Job, where I don't know if you saw that movie, the new one, not the old one. The old one's just kind of like 60s psychedelic tripped out. It's weird, but the new one, which is still not all that new, it's like probably 15 years old. There are some people who they're robbing a bank, which I don't recommend at all. I would say probably don't do that. But they come in and what you're saying here about purpose, this specifically reminds me of that. They go around and they say, oh, when we steal this money and I get $1 million of it or whatever that amount is, I'm going to go do X. Or I'm going to go buy this, or I'm going to go do that. Now, that's not the same as purpose, of course, but they go around and there's like 5 of them and they all answer that question. And then there's the last guy and they're like, well, what about you? And he's like, well, I'll just take one of all of yours. I'll get the record player. I'll get the house. I'll get the car. I'll get whatever that is, all the list. And then he goes on to steal all the money from the people stealing the money. And he goes and actually copies all the things. He doesn't know what he wants. So it sounds like purpose to an extent is figuring out what you want from your life and what you have to offer with your life. And maybe that's the way to put it.
No, that's well said. There was a man, this story wrecks my heart. There was an older man in the hospital dying. And beside him was his son. And he looked at him, to his son, and he said, I finally figured out why I'm here. Mm. But now it's time to say goodbye. Mm. I think within the longing of all of us, the excitement that my life matters and that I can do something that matters comes with the weight of figuring out how to live a life that matters. Mm. I feel like early on in our life, we have this excitement. Maybe when we graduate high school or college, we might think, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be however we fill in the blank. Yeah. When we're young, we're like, I'm going to be a basketball player. And then we're 20, I'm going to be a doctor, whatever we fill in the blank with. And we just assume that we're blazing a trail. And then all of a sudden we hit our mid 30s and we're like, I don't even know. Is this amounting to anything? What where's this really going?
Yeah.
Then we reach this critical place in life where we feel like we've gone down the road too far to ask the question of purpose.
Yeah.
And we're literally afraid to engage in the conversation of purpose.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid that maybe we've blown it with our life.
Yeah.
And we don't want to have any discussion that causes me to realize that.
I love that. We're going to take a break right here. We're talking about a lot of stuff. We're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to go a little bit deeper here when we come back. Before we do that, though, we have 3 questions we always ask. And the first one, again, we always ask this. So this has nothing to do with our conversation so far, but it has everything to do with our conversation so far. The first question we always ask every guest is, how do you find purpose in what you do?
Well, I tell you, when you know your purpose, it's easy.
Yeah.
My purpose, you got it out of me.
I'm not gonna force you to say it, you know.
Yeah. Now, my purpose is to help people.
Yeah.
Now, how many ways can I do that on any given day?
Probably 2 million, 3 million, a billion.
It is limitless.
Yeah.
So anything I do, I take that same heart posture into it.
Yeah.
So everything I do is purposeful.
What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome?
My fear of disappointing people.
People pleaser.
I don't know if I feel it that same. I don't know if I would phrase it that way. Maybe I don't want it phrased that way because I don't feel like I'm a people pleaser, because I'm the kind of guy that'll get in someone's grill.
Okay.
If it helps you.
Yeah.
I would say it differently. I'm afraid of disappointing people.
So letting them down.
Yeah. Letting people down.
And finally, what's the next big dream, idea, or goal that you have?
My wife and I sat on a beach for our 25th anniversary and stated to each other that with the rest of our life, we want to help 100,000 families be purposeful and powerful. That mission hasn't changed.
I'm going to ask one more follow-up question here. Maybe it's premature, but what you mentioned right there, I think, is really interesting. I think often we think of purpose as very singular, my purpose. But you mentioned as a husband and wife, you're talking about purpose.
Yeah.
I think often we internalize purpose and we don't see how it can be a collaborative effort. Talk to us about that for a second, how you see it more than just yourself doing this, but why it's so significant. And I agree with this, to have your spouse as a part of this and have other people that are on board with what you're doing.
This is a whole great conversation. If anyone's married, their relationship with each other is the catalyst for everything they're doing. And the mistake that we make is we try to make our job the most important thing, and then we just come home to our spouse. A married couple has a tremendous opportunity to impact the world by who they become together. I don't know how to answer or discuss this topic quickly or simply, but I'll just say this. When I do coaching with men, sometimes I'll take them out to play Frisbee golf. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like men, we're just better at talking when we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yesterday I'm with 3 other men. We're talking about life and we're talking about marriage, and we talked about how a man finds a sweet spot. Mm. And here's one thing that we discussed was that marriage has the ability to impact every single area in a man's life. But too often we're trying to get something else to be great, and then we just have a marriage, and we don't realize that if we get our marriage to be great, it's amazing how it elevates us in every other area of our life. So I'll just say this, the question you asked, for my wife and I to be able to sit on a beach at a 25th anniversary and to be able to say, this is what we want for the rest of our life, that's the culmination of a relationship that's been built day by day over the course of years. Mm-hmm. And so that's just something that came out of the relationship we have.
Super cool. Well, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back with Mark, we're going to continue this journey. I'm going to ask him a question he asks through this process, and not him personally, but it's an interesting question. You're going to have to come back to hear more of that. So we're going to take a break right here, and we'll be right back. Hey there, it's Mike, and every day across social media channels everywhere, I see the same questions being asked. Who should design my next website? Where should I get a new logo design? Hey, I need a video editor. Who should I use? And these questions are hard to answer because every project is unique. But there's a company out there that is there to help. Their name is Floxy. Floxy offers unlimited projects by a vetted creative team for a flat monthly rate. Video editing, graphic design, copywriting, web design, and more. They can help you. And they are constantly adding new categories where they can help you in the future, too. Their project managers are US-based, giving you same-day responses and 24-hour turnaround on most requests. All that with a simple, fixed monthly price. But you don't have to take my word for it. One of their clients, Florian, says this: Floxy is that missing component for my business that I wish I had always had. Dealing with freelancers on sites like Fiverr and Upwork is time-consuming and a very hit or miss. With Floxy, I get one point of contact for all my work, and they are quick to respond. Their work is high quality and on point. Overall, it is much cheaper and much better to use Floxy than anything else I've ever tried so far. So if you're ready to get the design you want, if you're ready to have the next website built that you need, or maybe that video edited, Floxy is there to help. And as a listener of Jumblethink, they're going to give you 10% off your first month. All you have to do is head on over to Floxy, FLOCKSY.com/Jumblethink. That's Floxy.com/Jumblethink to get 10% off your first month. And by the way, that comes with a 14-day money-back guaranteed. It's time to stop waiting for perfect design and to get your projects done. So head on over to Floxy.com/Jumblethink and start getting your projects completed. Now let's return to the conversation. We are back with Mark Delaney. Before we get rolling, how can people find and connect with you?
Our website is markdelaney.me. You can also I have an influencer page on Facebook, markdelaney.me, and those are the easiest ways to connect.
Awesome. Those links are in the episode notes, so wherever you are, however you're listening, just click on the links. It will take you right there. It's magic how it works. It really is. I mentioned before we took the break that there's a question that you ask in your process. I think it's week 3, maybe it's week 2, and you ask this question: what is the prevailing feeling that you have about yourself? I'll say that again. What is the prevailing feeling you have about yourself? I mentioned this offline. I am a strong believer that identity is the foundation of finding purpose, and I feel like on the surface, this is not necessarily directly identity, but I feel like how we think of ourselves set ourselves up for success or failure in how we can live our purpose, how we can live life, how we live in relationships. I think that this question is a much more robust question than it seems at the surface. It seems like I feel good about me. I'm healthy. I'm whatever. Seems like a very surface question, but when you start peeling the layers of this question, this is, I think, what preconditions us to how we respond to everything else.
I totally agree. Our life moves in the direction of our strongest thoughts, without a doubt. And so, yes, this question is absolutely a conversation starter. It's not very often that we think this question and certainly process it with someone else. Here's a common thing that happens through this discussion. A young man, 30 years old, married, 2 little kids. I ask him that question, and his response is, "I feel like I'm not enough." And we ask questions like, so where do you think that started? When's the first time you thought that? And then what we always end up talking about from this discussion is usually the prevailing thought we have about ourselves is a lie. Usually it's a negative thing.
So I want to pause you there. You say it's a lie. Is that lie built on experience? Is it built on, like, where does that lie start from?
I think usually experience.
Okay. And that goes back to, like you say, our purpose, this journey of purpose, either this shift of when we lose purpose is either something that's happened to us or because of us. Is this what feeds the belief then?
Yes, it becomes our identity that I did that or that happened.
Okay.
And because that thing happened or because I did that, my life of purpose is now gone and now I'm just stuck in a bush hiding. And my goal in life is to hide what happened to me and project what I want to project until I die, which is not living.
Yeah.
But in this conversation, what usually happens, for instance, this young man, his prevailing thought was, I'm not enough.
Okay.
Now the good news is the lie is almost always parked right next to the truth.
Yeah.
It's just right next. And you guide people through conversation. And for him, the truth is this: you're not supposed to be enough. The goal of the man is not to be enough. It's to be able to be okay with not being enough.
Yeah.
I mean, which is a huge twist of thinking and such an important one. If I'm a business owner and I walk into the room for a meeting and I think that I'm supposed to be enough and have all the answers, versus I walk into the room and I'm okay saying to the people that work for me, I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
When you feel like you don't have to be enough. For me personally, whenever I have the feeling that I'm not enough, I quickly remind myself I'm not supposed to be. I'm relying on God with everything I do. I'm a mere mortal.
Yeah.
It's interesting. A young lady around the same age, she said, my prevailing feeling is that I don't belong. And she went back and she talked about when she was a teenager and she was the person that never fit into a clique. But if someone got kicked out of a clique, they'd always come to her because they knew in her that they would find someone who would be faithful and loyal and friendly to them. And we asked her, so the lie's parked right next door to the truth. What's the truth? And she processed, and 5 minutes later she said, the truth is I help people belong.
That's good.
Now, if you walk into every room of your life thinking, I don't know if I belong or not, you're going to have a chip on your shoulder. You're going to try to prove yourself to people. But now if you walk into every room with this mindset of how can I help other people belong, now that's a real game changer. So you're right. Identity is one of the huge hurdles that we deal with in helping people come to their purpose.
It's very rare that we have coaches on the show. It's just not something that we typically do. But I love the topic of how you coach. And one of the things that you do is you lead a mastermind called the Purpose Mastermind. It has a really cool workbook with it. I have it sitting right in front of me here. Thank you so much for sending that over. I think some people have a problem trying to figure things out. And in that, they get into their head and they either overthink it or they go on to bunny trails that take them to somewhere that they're just like, where did I get off the path I was supposed to be on over here? And I love that you've come in and said purpose is significant. It matters for each of us. It's important that we find it. It's one thing to say that, and a lot of people say that. It's another thing to say, this is how you get there to figuring it out. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about your discovery, how you've created this curriculum, and what you walk people through so that they can answer that question that we're not supposed to answer till the end of the chapter about what is my purpose. My purpose.
Well, you tapped into something that is so critical when you said we get problems in life and then we hyper focus on it and it just becomes this whole living thing. We look at the Purpose Mastermind as kind of a human defibrillator.
Yeah.
To just bring someone back to life, and then you function differently. People come to me like 3 weeks ago. A man called me. He's a gym friend, which means we talk about dumbbells every now and then. He called me, and he said, "I slept with another woman. My wife left me, and I want to put a gun to my head."
Wow.
And he's like, how do I get my wife back? And I told him, frankly, I said, we're not going to talk about your marriage.
Yeah.
I said, that's a distraction.
Yeah.
And this is how we face pretty much any problem that someone comes to us with. I'm like, we're going to do the Purpose Mastermind.
Yeah.
Because here's how I think many of us live our life. We're in a very dark room, and in the middle of the floor is some object. And every day we get up and trip on it and fall on our face.
Yeah.
And finally, after doing that 750 days, we finally go, I guess I'm going to have to get help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, now if we did this after 10 days, we just call a friend.
Yeah.
But after 750 days, we think that we need someone who has a lot of PhDs.
Yeah.
Because our problem we feel is so complex. And it's really not that complex. It's just we've had it for such a long time.
Yep.
So people come to us and they want us to talk about the dark the room and the object in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
We're going to turn the light on.
Yeah.
And when the light comes on, guess what? That person can look down and say, oh,
yeah,
I can move that.
Yeah.
I can even get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so that's our approach with this whole thing. And what blows me away with this, it wasn't really the goal, but it's happening with the mastermind. Like this couple, we went through 2 sessions of the mastermind, and I kept telling him, we're not going to talk about your marriage. And he finally stopped. He finally stopped thinking about, how do I get my wife back? Is she going to come back? And he realized, I said, we're trying to help you get your life back.
Yeah.
And when you become the man you're designed to be, your wife will want you back.
Yeah.
But so his thinking changed. The light came on.
Yeah.
He began to think different, act different.
Yeah.
So much so that his wife called my wife and said, I want to go through this mastermind with you. And so she's going through it with my wife.
Yeah.
And today they're sleeping in the same house.
Wow.
They're sleeping in the same bed.
Wow.
And they look at life totally differently.
Yeah.
And it's because they've been on this journey of rethinking how they look at their life, their whole life.
Yeah.
Instead of just, how do we fix our marriage? Well, get your life back.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing what can follow.
Yeah. Our culture and our churches and our society as a whole do something really, really well, which is horribly bad. And that is, we like to treat symptoms, not the core. We like to go after and say, oh, they're a drug addict. We got to treat them for addiction issues. And we never touch the actual root of, this is why they medicate. We like to go over and say, like you said with this marriage example, oh, this guy cheated on his wife. We're going to teach him how to be a better husband. And that doesn't solve the problem because you're treating a symptom.
Yes.
And we see it in government. We see it in business. We see it in churches. We see it everywhere where it's just like, all we're going to do is try to do the easy fix. Here's this. We're going to put a Band-Aid on this, and you can survive life through that. You're going to be fine. And people are living miserably. They're living poorly. They're living broken lives because we're not willing to go deep. And I think that's that, coming back to the beginning of the conversation, that's that place of vulnerability of saying, I've got to pull this deep,
So right. And that is the power of vulnerability. Vulnerability gives us the ability to get to the root. Mm-hmm. Because, there's so many stories I could tell you on this. For instance, as a man, I lived my whole life overweight. Probably day 2 or 3 of my life. We're not sure.
Wow.
Overweight. And it became my identity. Exactly what you said. Like, it was my identity. This is my problem. I'm overweight. And so I told myself every day, I need to lose weight.
Yeah.
The thought process of I need to lose weight, you can't lose weight thinking that way. That's your identity.
Yeah.
When I finally became vulnerable, it was like touching a domino that had 100 dominoes behind it.
Yeah.
And it totally transformed my life.
Yeah.
But vulnerability is the last thing we want to do. I'll give an example of my story. That when I became vulnerable about my own self in terms of food and weight, because I was basically a drug addict. It was called sugar. Mm-hmm. And my dealer was Hostess. Little Debbie was my really good friend. And when I became honest about my story, I got a group on Facebook. It was a closed group, and I just told people, every day I'm going to tell you how much I weigh, but more importantly, I'm going to post a video. I'm going to tell you why I weigh what I weigh.
Yeah.
Because without vulnerability, we wake up every day saying, I need to lose weight.
Yeah.
You can't lose weight thinking that way.
Yeah.
With vulnerability caused me to totally change my thinking. And I began to ask myself, why did I gain the weight? Which got me to the root instead of settling with fruit. And so someone very dear in my life, my sister, who had a problem from age about 13, a lot of things happened in her life, and it caused her to severely stutter her entire life.
Wow.
And she was watching my story, and once again, our story is all the same. She heard her story within my story.
Wow.
And one day she sent me a video message to my wife and I, and she said, I never talk about this, but it's time for me to stop stuttering. Common wisdom says you need to go to a speech pathologist and pay a lot of money. Someone who has all kinds of complex answers needs to help you.
Yeah.
All I could do was tell her the same thing that I realized on my journey.
Yeah.
I don't need to lose weight. That'll cause me to lose the real weight, which is my thinking. And that causes transformation. And so all I did is I called her and I said, you don't need to stop stuttering. And there again, when you have a problem, whether it's weight, stuttering, some kind of addiction, you tell yourself, I can't have my life until I stop this.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect recipe for never being able to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I told her. We never talked about it. About 3 months after that, I was outside and I was getting on Facebook to do a video, and a message popped up on Facebook. My sister is doing a Facebook Live. I'm like, wait.
This is not her.
People who've been stuttering from age 13 to 51 don't do live videos.
Yeah.
I clicked on it. And you can still see it today. She did a 3-minute video proclaiming to the world that we should all be the hands and feet of God in the midst of this whole epidemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
This whole thing going on, everything happening. And honestly, it wouldn't matter if she stuttered. She should live so boldly.
Yeah.
But in that 3-minute video, she never stuttered one time.
Wow.
And that's the answer. And this is the kind of thing that happens in people who is Purpose Mastermind. We don't talk about this. It just happens. It's freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freedom is possible for people.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it just involves the vulnerability to look at one's life differently.
Yeah.
If we're willing to be vulnerable, we are willing to take us. We'll gain the courage to step out of prison.
Yeah. Love that. Anyone who has been struggling with feeling discontent, anyone that's listening that's feeling unfulfilled, anyone that feels like they're living a safe life or a not a fulfilled life, I really highly recommend this mastermind. It's not long. How long is it? It's
4 weeks, 4 meetings.
Okay. Not a big commitment, but it is a commitment that could change your life if you're listening right now. And so go check that out. markdelaney.me. You can find the mastermind there. We'll have the links in the episode notes. We're going to take a break right here. When we come back with Mark, it is the dreaded rapid fire questions. We'll be right back. Next week on Jumble Think, we have 2 incredible conversations lined up for you. Kicking off the week, we have Robert Ferguson. He's the teaching pastor at Hillsong Church in Sydney, Australia. We talk about his new book, which is all about the art of storytelling. It's a really fun conversation. You're not going to want to miss that. Then later in the week, we get to sit down with our friend Josh Carey. Josh Carey is one of the guys behind PodMax, which is a killer event connecting entrepreneurs and podcasters from around the world. I've been a part of this event for a while now, and it's a super fun event. We get to talk about that, but we also talk about Josh's journey of entrepreneurship and his podcast, The Hidden Entrepreneur. So make sure to join us next week for both of those conversations. Now let's jump into rapid fire questions.
Levez seulement le bras pour mettre l'aiguille sur le disque. Mettez le contact, reposez votre bras et attendez. Restez calme pendant un moment.
We are back with Mark. Mark, are you ready for rapid fire questions?
I think I am. It's hard. I love conversations, so it's hard to give short answers. I'm going to give my best.
All right. First question. As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I would say a baseball player.
What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Nothing replaces taking the one step right in front of you.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
I would like to see adult recess happening all over parks around the world.
Love that. That is a great idea.
I go to the gym all the time now. I used to faithfully go once every 3 years, like once a year, one day.
Yeah.
And it's all it is a bunch of muscled up people.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us need recess every day. I want recess back.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I almost try not to have a legacy because the striving for one can destroy the possibility of one happening.
Interesting.
I think it's so I want to live a life that matters. And I guess I feel like I want my legacy to be that I helped someone else live a life of legacy.
Where do you find inspiration?
Doing something physically hard.
Okay.
While listening to old gospel music.
Interesting. Like Southern gospel or like church hymn gospel?
Probably almost church hymns. Not really church hymns, but I would say this. The songs I listened to when I was like 12 years old, and the songs I sung in church when I was 12, and I can go out and run down the street doing something hard, it still inspires me. When I can listen, just today I ran down the street and the first song was called My Tribute. To God Be the Glory. And the first times I ever heard that song was when Mama was playing it in church. And it still means just as much to me today.
Super cool. What is one book you think every dreamer should read?
I'm not a book guy.
Oh.
I have friends that are book people, and I love having conversations with them, and they help me get the information from the book. So I'm not, matter of fact, I'm afraid of being the person that's an information gatherer. And I feel like the love of books, we can become the person that, I got to read the next book. I'll be done. No, I got to read the next book. And there's always the next one out there. So I love a book, As a Man Thinks.
Okay.
I've not read the whole thing, but people tell me about it. And it's really good.
For you, how do you define success?
Any day that I help someone with anything, mind you, with anything.
Love that. What is one trend you are currently excited about?
I think the church all across the world is getting rocked to the core. And my hope is that in that happening, the church will become more powerful than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because we're being forced to ask the deepest, hardest questions about what we do and why.
Yeah.
And the church just might become greater than ever in the world.
What is one habit you find helpful in your life?
Exercising when I'm afraid.
I like that. I like the.
I used to eat when I was afraid.
Okay.
Now I exercise when I'm afraid.
I like that delineator. That exercise when I'm afraid. I think that's really cool.
Yep.
What is one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
That people don't want help.
I think that's a really good lesson to learn. It's
3 years
surprising.
ago, I left teaching 3 years ago because I had all this information on marriage and parenting, and I'm like, I got to help people with this. I had no idea people really don't want help. And generally speaking, they don't want help.
Yeah. I think it was Bruce Wilkinson. He wrote a book called The Dream Giver. And and he struggled with that from what I understand of like, hey, you've got to find your hero's journey, which is, a Joseph Campbell concept. And It was interesting. I really resonate with that message. It comes back to purpose and finding your journey, and it's allegorical and stuff. And it's the process. But I found it interesting how many people were okay living miserably safe lives, where they're miserable in it, but they're safe and they're secure. So everything's got to be good, right?
Yeah. I read the first line in a book called Chase the Lion. And it was at a season of my life 3.5 years ago, when I finally left teaching. The first line of the book, the goal of life is not to arrive at death safely.
Yeah. So
that's the moment I decided to resign from teaching and begin this endeavor.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you would be doing?
I would be the PE teacher for adult recess.
Okay.
And seriously, I love to teach people stuff through activity.
Yeah.
I would want to inspire the lives of people while playing kickball.
Interesting.
In a park at 6 a.m.
Nice.
I would love doing that.
What is one dream you are wanting to fulfill in your life?
I can't escape my daily dream that moves me is just seeing people. I want people to know their purpose, and I want people to have great love. And just the daily dream is just helping two people in marriage have great love together.
Love it. Love it. As we wrap up, we always like to leave our guests have a final thought. What is your final thought for us today?
My final thought, it goes back to the vulnerability piece. And I've learned this in my life, and I just want to encourage anybody that you do not have to have the ability to fix your problem. Vulnerability is just to honestly face your problem. And when you honestly face your problem, instead of living your life to compensate for it, you can be set free from it. And for most of us, our biggest problem in life is really just an ugly package of our life's greatest opportunity. And so I just want to encourage everybody listening to this. You have a conversation you need to have with one human being. All you have to do is start that sentence with, "Hey, can I tell you a story?"
Yeah.
And just say the first sentence, and the rest will go easy, and it can change your life.
Mark, it's been a lot of fun. It's a topic that I love, which makes it even more fun, but I think it's a topic that all of us need to address in our lives because it makes such a big difference. So thanks for taking that risk and stepping away from teaching to unlock the potential of finding purpose in each of our lives and being on the show with us today.
Absolutely. It has been a great honor. I love what you do. Keep doing what you're doing.
Once again, we want to thank Mark Delaney for taking time out and joining us on the show. His links are in the episode notes. Go check them out. I also want to thank our friends over at Floxy for sponsoring today's show. Whether you need graphic design, web development, or even video editing, they can help. Best of all, they want to give you 10% off your first month. All you have to do is head on over to Floxy, FLOCKSY.com/jumblethink. And I want to thank you for tuning in to today's show. I hope it sparked a question in your mind about your purpose, about chasing your dream. That's why we do Jumblethink, to encourage you on that journey. Yeah, we want to entertain you. We want to have amazing conversations that you enjoy. But at the end of the day, our hope is that you would find that purpose, that dream, your dream, the dream that God's given you. But to do that, you've got to take a risk. You've got to take a step. Now it's your turn. So get out there, dream big, and change the world around you.
Cherchez la meilleure position. Les bras et les jambes légèrement espacés. Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.